Oh.
Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at the Wars of Cyrus, King of Persia, against Antiochus, King of Assyria, with the tragical end of Panthea, played by the children of Her Majesty's Chapel, printed in 1594, dating to somewhere between 1587, 1590-ish. Guesses vary, but 1588-ish. Maybe, who knows? So yeah, late 1580s for this, and yes, it's for a boys' company, and it's doing all sorts of things of which I know almost nothing about this play at all. It really is a text that I didn't even know existed until a few months ago when I was looking through a list and went, oh, there's a play called that. So very late out the gate for me, and so I'm quite looking forward to finding out how it functions and hoping that it's going to do interesting things to find out what this text is doing. We have reading, and I will apologise now as I'm going to do my usual shtick of saying all the names wrong. Reading Panthea and Alexandra today is...
Rachael, Nicole, actor in New Jersey.
Reading Ctesiphon is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm all over the place, as per usual.
Reading Gobrias today is...
Hi, Alan Scott. I think I'm in Suffolk.
Reading Araspas and Dinon today is...
Hello, my name is Lynn Freitas. I'm a college composition teacher living in the northwestern United States.
Reading the prologue, First Nobleman and Magician is...
Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Chrysantas and Second Nobleman is...
Hello, Dan, actor based in Montpellier, France.
And reading King Cyrus and Libanio today is...
Lois Potter, retired academic living in London.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and generally moving us forward. Oh, did I miss out, Helen?
You did.
I missed out, Helen, and it's I haven't even ticked you off on the form. You know, it's I have no excuse. It wasn't even a pen slip of my memory failing. Reading Histaspas and Antiochus is...
Helen the Forgotten, living in Hull.
Okay, so the play opens with an address to the audience, which has been labelled as prologue because the address to an audience at the beginning is usually a prologue. Prologue, please.
We gentle gentlemen devise of late to shun the vulgar and the virtuous, present to you worthy to judge of us, our works of worth and valiantness at once. What wants in us imagine in the works, what in the works condemn the writer of. But if the work and writing please you both, that Xenophon from whence we borrow right, being both a soldier and philosopher, warrants that we record of Panthea, it is writ in sad and tragic terms, may move you tears, then you content our muse that seems to trouble you again with toys, or needless antics imitations, or shows, or new devices sprung elate. We have exiled them from our tragic stage, no trash of their tradition that can bring nor instance nor excuse. For what they do, instead of mournful plaints, our chorus sings, although it be against the upstart guise, yet warranted by grave antiquity, we will revive the which hath long been done.
So we've got a prologue there, giving us a sense of what we're getting. It's going to be tragic. There's going to be no needless antics, imitations, none of that silly stuff. It's going to all be tragic. Lois.
It's going to be a shambles if the punctuation goes on like that.
Yeah, isn't it weird? I'm fairly certain that's authentic. So, maybe a hint for our future readers.
And do you think you really wanted to shun the vulgar and the virtuous? I mean, I think that must be something else.
Yeah.
You think it's show, maybe? Show to the virtuous? I don't know.
Yeah, it was a bit Dadaist at times, wasn't it?
He doesn't want an audience at all? Okay, fine.
It starts with this sort of fairly conventional sense of, if we're at fault, blame us. If we're, the writer's at fault, blame the writer. Don't blame us. If you like both of it, isn't that fab? Other thoughts at this early stage? We've barely scraped the surface of this unknown quantity. Okay. Mournful plaints, people. Mournful plaints. That's what we're going for. So, Act 1, Scene 1, enters Cyrus, Histaspas, and Chrysantas with others.
Ye Persians, Medians, and Hyrcanians, trusty assistants, assisters in this happy war, ye see the banded power of Asia, whose number overspread the Assyrian fields and in their passage drank main rivers dry, by favor of the gods and our devour, are overthrown and scattered through the plains like autumn leaves before a northern wind. Croesus is foiled and fled to Lydia. The Arabian prince is whelmed amidst the sands, and last the old Assyrian king is slain. Now triumph in the fortune of your hands, whose fame hath directed these affairs.
O Cyrus, when I saw the Lydian king, Croesus, that dastard and reproach of Asia, shining in armor forged of Indian gold, brave mounted on a prancer of Eborus, so shamefully to forsake the field and fly, I envied that so cowardly a king should use so good an armor and a horse.
Chrysantas, like to Croesus be our foes, glorious in show, but cowardly in mind.
Cyrus, those arms which dastard Croesus were, and horse of pride and courage past compare, what heart so base that would deem to fight, might I but live to back so brave a steed?
Croesus is gone, and gone with him his steed. This wish of yours, Chrysantas, is in vain. But of 200 horses of mine own, of gallant race and courage singular, take you the choice, and furniture withal, the bridles bit of massy silver wrought, the bosses gold, the reins of Persian silk, the saddles all embroidered purple work, armed through with plates, with fine engraven gold, and golden trappers dangling to the ground.
So live, my lord, and flourish still, as I regard this honorable gift.
Now, lords, we have gotten the honor of the day, and with our feet trod down the Thracian pride, while I do sacrifice for victory and chose the holy altars of the gods, do you betwixt the armies part the spoils and glad our men with fruits of our conquest.
What portion of the gold shall we reserve to be employed in your highness' use?
Araspas, none for me. Divide it all. It pleaseth me to see my soldiers rich.
And exit Cyrus.
The Persian horsemen that did give the charge shall have 500 talents for their share.
The Medians that did enforce the fight and seconded the Persian men-at-arms allot to them 600 arming coats.
The archers of Hyrcania served so well as not to give them payment with the rest, were open wrong to their approved deserts.
You know that in the sacking of Assyrian tents, we found 3,000 Scythian bows in store, finished with quivers ready to the field. Let them be lotted to the Hyrcanians' part.
And truth, Chrysantas, you know well that bows and quivers agree with archers best. Cyrus himself, you see, refuseth gold, and only seeks to make his fellows rich. What rests amidst the conquered spoils, wherein his highness may be gratified.
Histaspas, there is a proud Assyrian tent, wherein the king was wont to sleep and blanket in. I think if that were offered to his hands, Cyrus would take it in most gracious part.
But Is the pride and bravery thereof worthy to be presented to our Lord?
Asia hath not a richer prize. The covering is of blue Sidoman silk, embroidered all with pearl and precious stones. They glimmer brighter than the sun itself on every point of the pavilion. On every point of the pavilion there stands a princely top of phoenix plumes, which trick with spangles and with silver belies, and every gentle murmur of the wind delights the day with every harmony. The stakes wherewith 'tis fastened to the ground are massy silver of the purest proof. The ropes are all of crimson, silk, and gold, hung from the top with rests of ivory. Under a vine where Bacchus bruiseth grapes, and 20 cubits hover in the leaves. Believe me, lords, when I behold the thing, the work appears so glorious to the eye.
Araspas, you describe a princely thing, worthy to be presented to a king.
And here's a tent, though far from such a tent. This shall be mine. The owner's fled or slain.
Oh, beauty, rare and more than mortal shape. What goddess oweth this earthly tabernacle?
Nicosia sings while Panthea sits and sighs, but singing sings of Panthea's wretchedness.
What are thee, lady?
What I would not be.
Fair you are. What would ye more?
I would be free. Ye Persian lords, I am a woeful dame, exposed to wretchedness and fortune's wrath, and thus I have resolved you what I am.
Lady, the graces that adorn your presence deserves a fortune mild, as is your face. But howsoe'er fortune envies you, yet we will use you honorably still.
You use me then, but as you ought to do.
Nay, lady, we may use you otherwise. For voluntary favors be no debt.
But lords, whate'er you ought is debt. You ought to use me well and therefore debt.
Madam, you are a captive in our hands, and captives are not to command the conquerors.
No, lords, if captives might command the conquerors, I would command you to release me hence. But captive as I am, honor commands that you entreat and use me honorably.
Such honor as to captives doth belong. Such honor, lady, we intend to you.
My sex requireth more than common grace.
And eke so doth that lively face.
Let be my visage, as shall please my conqueror. And now I'll learn to carve with servile terms. My lords, though captive, yet I am a queen, and wife unto the absent Susan king. My lord, and here Assyrian abradate, and noble prince and mighty man at arms, upon ambassage of the king of Bactria.
But madam, what persuasion moved your mind to thrust yourself onto the Assyrian camp?
Weighing the double fortune of the wars, and in my thoughts foredreading these mishaps, what likelier rescue to prevent my harms than to be guarded with a mighty camp, since that an army of united hearts is stronger than a fort of brazen walls?
Madam, your fall is great and lamentable, thus of a queen a captive to become. This rests to show your princely fortitude in bearing these mishaps with patient mind.
Philosophy hath taught me to embrace a mean and moderation in mishaps. Long since I learned to master all effects and perturbations that assail the mind. Only I have not learned to master chance. Yet have I learned to scorn the utmost spite. Only the pang that most torments my thought is absence of my best beloved lord.
Learn henceforth to forget your lord. There lives another lord to enjoy your love. Victorious Cyrus, he shall be your lord.
Victorious Cyrus, though I be his thrall, shall know my honor is invincible.
But they that once in state of bondage be must yield to hest of others that be free.
Lords, dream of me or Cyrus as you please, only this outward person is his thrall. My mind in honor free and ever shall.
For that, agree with Cyrus as you may. Till then, Araspas, take her to your tent.
Come, lady, you must walk apart with me.
So fortune and my destinies agree.
And there we'll pause as we don't have an exit written in the script. We can assume that that is there. So we've got, isn't Cyrus magnanimous? Let's split the money between all the people. There's a division of spoils there. As you know, conqueror, he doesn't want anything for himself. Isn't he great? And then we meet one of the captives, and yeah. Thoughts on the room, Alan?
I think all of them ought to be done for crimes against good taste from the descriptions of the spoils.
Lynn?
No, I'm just thinking, Alan's right, that tent's pretty over the top.
Spangles with silver bells.
Solid silver tent stakes. Like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Lois?
I think this is presumably based on something which I probably should have read but haven't, Xenophon's Cyropedia, which I think is supposed to be the account of, how to be a good general and king. But I wonder, is there singing from Panthea's tent? I mean, she says something when she appears that sounds...
Yeah, that's one of those bits where I was going, it's like it's dialogue, but it's also stage direction at the same time, because it's weirdly phrased, and I left it as dialogue just simply because it meant it flowed, but it sort of seems to be weirdly both, or whether it's a descriptor following the singing, or it seems like there should be a song there, yes. But it's a really weird line that I couldn't decide what to do with it. I was torn over several readings of several lines where I just sort of went, no, I'll go to Briony, then Rachael.
Who or what is Susan King?
Yes.
It came out like this really modern contemporary name. I know it's probably not Susan King, a person who works in HR, but it just felt like out of nowhere.
The king of some place called Susan, which is probably more like Syrian or something.
Yeah, it probably is. I wouldn't be surprised.
Susa is a place, S-U-S-A. Alexandra went there.
Oh, right.
Oh, right. So it's
Susa is a place. Susan is the adjective from it.
Got it.
Yes, sometimes we're too quick to leap on. That must be wrong. Rachael.
No, for the Panthea singing, was she there with a servant? Because she says Nicosia sings while Panthea sits and sighs. So does she have like a woman attending on her?
Yeah, I think that's what's going on there. Coming out of a tent or approaching there. Through song, and as it's a boys' company play, the song makes a lot of sense as well, because that's what they do. Helen?
Yeah, I didn't manage to follow her history of why she made so many bad choices, but it does seem that she is not actually a part of any of this war, but she just happened to get caught up in it. And is a person of some note, and I think taking her as a thrall, a slave of the king, is possibly not the correct decision. I mean, she should be sent back to wherever she belongs.
Because she talks about her best beloved lord. She has a husband somewhere, and I like the line where she's saying you can only have control of my outward, my body. You cannot control my mind. My mind and honour free and ever shall. There's a lot going on underneath with Panthea. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. Eric.
It felt like I think it was Campaspe, the one with Alexandra and the where you kind of have a conqueror coming in to sort of, court his captive, basically.
Yes, but unlike Campaspe, there will be no comedy servant routines, allegedly. Is that a comment? Who knows?
Does Campaspe predate this, or is it the other way around?
Yes. 5-6 years, something like that, depending on how you date it. Could be less. Yeah. We're still mid-scene, by the way. But any other thoughts before we rejoin the scene? Okay, let's continue. So we can assume that Panthea has exited and been taken away by Araspas. But here we have enter Gobrias and his page.
Persians, conduct me to your general.
What art thou that thus armed with sword and spear dares crave access to our general?
I come to yield. Bring me to Cyrus' tent.
Thy habit shows thou art an enemy, and we may suspect thou mean'st but ill. Therefore, if thou wilt yield, unarm thyself, and we will bring thee unto Cyrus' tent.
The Assyrian king whom ye have put to death, making me the leader of 1,000 horse, buckled the armour with his gracious hands, nor shall it be unloosed but by asking.
How haughty-minded is this conquered man? Cyrus shall know upon what terms he stands. Assyrian captain, as thou lovest thy life, stand not upon thy guard, but yield to us.
Small guard have I to shield me from your swords. Most of my region is slain in fight, but under 1,000 only these are left, whose wounds yet bleeding prove them faint and weak. Yet rather will we run upon your spears than with dishonour yield our weapons. If ye injure us, if ye injure us, must be our friends, and either make us live or die like men.
Enter Cyrus.
Whence art thou that craves access to us?
By birth, great Cyrus, an Assyrian, and of the noblest house in Babylon. Sometime commander of 1,000 horse, but those men have slaughtered and surprised, and therefore I have lost the ample Shlee. Yet I am mighty Gobrias, rich in revenues, strong in fortresses, that can command a camp of fighting men, as resolute, be it said without offence, as those that had the glory of the day. All which with me, the governor of all, I yield unto your mighty patronage.
This stout Assyrian hath a liberal look, and of my soul is far from treachery. Albeit, Gobrias, I mistrust thee not, yet tell me, being so wealthy and so strong, why rather yieldest thou to thine enemy, than live with freedom in Assyria?
Oh no, my lord, while Assyrian king, which in this war was slain, enjoyed the crown, being highly favoured of his majesty, he sent unto me for mine only son, meaning to grace me with the nuptial of his fair daughter, lovely Carmela. I, glad to have alliance with the king, sent him my son, who coming to the court was fair entreated, gently entertained, and well was he that might be his cobbler. For fair he was, and full of sweet demeanour, pleasant, sharp, wise, and liberal. And were he not my son, I would say more, though his remembrance makes me weep outright.
Noble Assyrian, either leave to weep or speak no more. Cyrus is full of ruth, and when a man of thy estate laments, he cannot choose but weep for company. Dry up these tears and tell the rest.
Began to grow familiar with my son, and with him rode a hunting in the woods, where first the hounds put up a russet bear, at which the king flung soon his hunting dart, and missed, but mine threw and pierced his heart. Then suddenly a lion did arise, at whom likewise he let his javelin fly, and hit him not. which when my son perceived, he o'erthrew the lion as the bear. Which done, said he, twice have I thrown and sped, whereat the prince snatched from his page a spear, and in a rage murdered my guiltless son. And that, which grieves me more, when he was dead, albeit the old king wept most bitterly, he neither did repent nor shed a tear, nor would consent to give him burial, but left him in the field until I came, and took his body in these aged arms, which eke for grief made me let him fall, and then afresh made him to breed again, and me to weep upon his naked breast. O judge, my lord, if you have had a son, how heavily I brook his timeless death. O judge, my lord, whether that I have cause to offer service to that murderer, on whom I cannot look, but in his face, as in a glass, I see my slaughtered son.
Gobrias, thou hast just cause to revolt, and we to trust thy welcome unto us. And for the 1,000 horse which thou hast lost, we will requite them with a greater gift. Be thou lieutenant of the Arcanians.
I humbly thank your royal majesty, and here in presence of the Persian lords, adopt you heir of all my provinces, my holds and castles, villages and towns, conditionally, that I may be revenged on this arch tyrant, murderer of my son, saving one daughter, I have never a child, and she, endued with jewels, plate, and gold, shall be bestowed as you, my lord, think best.
Assyrian, I have captains worthy her. She shall be matched as beseems a princess born. And for revenge on the Assyrian king, we will girt in Babylon with our high host, or either starve them with a lingering siege, or rip his bowels with our Persian swords. But in the meantime, frolic in our tent. Histaspas, lead the Assyrian to our camp and entertain him, as beseemeth a prince.
And Canis and Chrysantas follow him.
Araspas, as I lately gave in charge, is all the spoil divided equally?
It is, my lord, and every soldier please, where is enclosed a jewel of such worth as Asia hardly can afford the like. The Susian king, stout Abradates' queen, a woman so richly embellished with beauty and perfection of the mind as never any mortal creature was. Her hair as radiant as is Tagus sand, and softer than the stream on which it runs. Her lily cheeks, all dyed with ruddy blush, cast such reflection to the standers by as doth the union of 10,000 suns. Through her transparent neck the air doth play, and makes it fairer than a crystal glass. And from her eyes it seems nature herself bids every star receive his proper light. For with her grace she casteth such a brightness as makes the night more brighter than the day, and day more fairer than is Elysier. But when she talks, so pleasant is her voice, as were she blacker than the pitchy night, she would entice the hardest Massagite, or wildest Scythian, in your highness' camp. And when she looks upon you, were she dumb, her beauty were instead of eloquence, and had she neither loveliness or wit, the harmony she makes would ravish you. She weeps and plays with both her, while both her handmaids sing and sighs at every strain, using that note which Orpheus sings for Eurydice. Her ringing hands, her waiting maids keep time upon their mournful breasts, as were it flint. We could not choose but melt to hear their songs. Wherefore, my lord, comfort this captive dame, and with your presence comfort her distress.
Araspas, wouldst thou have me visit her, when by her beauty I may be enthralled?
Your grace may look on her and yet not love.
Dost thou not think that love is violent?
Nay, rather voluntary, my gracious lord. You know that women's beauty is like fire, and fire doth always burn each thing alike. Therefore, if nature were of such great power, Should every man by beauty be inflamed? But beauteous things are not in equal powers, for some love that which others do abstain. Either for fear or love, to prove this true, the sister of the brother is not loved, the daughter of the father is not desired, and yet someone loves any of them both.
If love be voluntary, as thou sayest, why cannot lovers leave it when they will?
They may.
Have you not seen them weep and wail for death, empty their purse of coin, their brain of wit, sending both gifts and letters to their loves?
They yield too much unto affections. 'Tis folly and not beauty makes them die.
Men are in folly when they are in love. Urge me no more, I will not visit her. For by the eye love slips into the heart, making men idle, negligent. Nothing can more dishonor warriors than to be conquered with a woman's look. Araspas, I resign my part to thee. Thou shalt be keeper of that Susan queen. Use her as fits a woman of such birth. Excuse me for not coming to her tent. Bid her be merry with her singing maids, and say that Cyrus will entreat her fair.
And they exit. There may be music, there may not be music. There are some confusions as to the way this progresses into the next scene. Okay, quite a lot to take in here, because we go from King, would you like to help me do some revenge? Lion, murdering, death stuff. Backstory. Dumb show, desperately needed there. And then we get to this whole... have we got a lady for you in tent number 1? At which point we seem to be setting up a theme here for Cyrus going, I am not interested in the ladies at all. That's not going to turn around later on, is it? I'm fascinated by Cyrus's just sort of newsreader ability to switch from tragic death to happiness mode there. You know, rip his bowels with our Persian swords. But in the meantime, frolic in our tent. That's quite a switcheroo that it is able to do there. Okay, yeah, lots of problematic issues here, but lots to chew on as well. Thoughts on the room, Eric first.
Yeah, I was going to say that bit that you just mentioned. It reminded me a bit of Solomon and Cressida, where you've got this obviously because they thought that Turks clearly murder people all the time. You had that quick succession of sort of murders in the play. Yeah, it just reminded me of that, and I was like, is this going to happen as well here?
Well, it's also said, you noted Compaspe earlier, just the end of this scene is moving in that sort of vein of let's have a debate about the nature of desire and Cyrus asking these pointed questions of someone who thinks they know all the answers. It does seem to be engaging with the same kind of business. It's doing lots of things. We've got more description of that entrance of Panthea. I think we can safely say that's definitely a stage direction and doesn't function in any way as dialogue. You know, her first appearance. Is she playing the accompaniment? They're sort of hinted there that she's playing the music that is then sung while she's sighing. And they're singing about her wretchedness. It's using all the different devices, it seems. Lois.
Yeah, there's reference to singing maids in the plural. So, I mean, this is a boys' production, so I suppose there were lots of boys who could play singing maids.
So we effectively have this very strong appearance of Panthea at the beginning, which has obviously turned Araspas's head so that he believes she has a transparent neck, apparently.
Yes.
Helen.
Yes, I think there is stuff to be learnt from the story of Gobrias' son. If you are a prince's companion and you go hunting, it's all very well to do better than the prince. What you mustn't do is say so. This is basic court etiquette. You don't say, twice have I thrown and sped, when the guy beside you has twice thrown and not sped in the least.
You go, oh, bugger, you know. Or something.
Was that yours or mine?
Yeah. Oh.
Yes.
It was the wind. I mean, I didn't. You know, it was just pure fluke. I'm so sorry. You know, it's just not fair. This contest. So many ways of passing that. Yes. Other thoughts? We've had a lot of setup in this scene. Eric.
There was a bit. One second. Let me just find the right part of it. Yeah, I was thinking that the whole like. Cyrus giving Araspas the Susan Queen stuff. Maybe that's actually more of a political thing rather than an actual sort of I don't love her thing. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me, because obviously Cyrus is also a political leader as well as a sort of human being, though that hasn't been mentioned as much.
Yes, possibly. That might go into the mix. We'll see if there may be more evidence on for or against that later. Helen?
Yeah, I think there is a tremendous insistence here on material culture. I mean, any production of this would have to be really, really heavy on Middle Eastern artifacts.
It's very blingy, isn't it?
Yes, but it's dense, and I think the people, what they're wearing, the what people are carrying, what's hanging on the walls, I think everything would have to be very densely over the top. With things.
Any other thoughts before we go into the next scene? Rachael, are you you look like you're thinking of speaking. You're not waving, so I don't know.
Gobrias says he has a daughter. Is that supposed to be Panthea?
Who knows?
We don't know yet. We don't know. The mention of a daughter does seem like that's a plot point, doesn't it? But you know, other characters may be available. The play does not seem to have stated anything as of yet, so I'm sure we'll find out. It's an excellent question. I don't know the answer yet. Eric.
I was just going to say the description is really interesting, just sort of, not just of the stuff that they're wearing and the sort of, you know, the whole phoenix, you know, the sulks and the, you know, the colorful things at the beginning, but also just like the description of Panthea is just like, not just the whole transparent neck thing, but just, I don't know, it's quite poetic.
Oh, it's incredibly florid. You know, he's really selling it. I'm really, really going for it in that sense, yeah. Alan?
I'm just wondering whether, in fact, given that we know that this was the Queen's, the boys of the Queen's Chapel, whether a large chunk of what we've seen so far is them basically saying, look, Master of the Revels, look how much bling we spent all this fee on. Can we have some more, please?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be an interesting question of what the resources available for them were. Eric?
I was just going to say the whole, like, you know, description of Panthea by Araspas is a little bit Callisto from you know, Callisto and Melody, where he's like, oh yes, her hair and down to her ankles and her eyes and her, you know, so on and so forth, and it's like, yeah. But
yeah, especially considering having met her and what she's actually like as well, and in her very steadfast refusal of engaging with anything that they are doing. There's something really quite creepy about the way they're acting, the way they're describing, especially contrasted with actually what she's said and what she's done as a character so far. So, Lynn.
Yeah, that's a good point, Eric. And I was thinking that, Araspas is he's the describer character, because he has this fairly protracted description of the tent, and then in a kind of parallel way has this description of Panthea. So I wonder if that hints that he's really very sort of easily captivated by visual things, kind of shallow in that way.
Saw a shiny thing and was...
Yeah. He likes shiny things.
Yeah. And it's also the interesting, the reason why Cyrus, says, I'm not, I will not visit her. But I resign my part to thee. It's like, is he getting a vibe from that Araspas is really keen, and that actually I'm not getting involved in your what obviously is your thing. For all the florid description you've given to me, I'm getting the impression that you're quite keen there. Briony.
Yeah, I strongly feel like it's going to get a little bit rapey coming up, because there's been a few things that have really kind of, like the whole description of, well, even if she couldn't speak, just looking at her, and even if you couldn't see her, then their music would make you ravish her. So it's not your fault, it's her fault, and that's already been set up. And then there's this, like, well, you can have her, use her as fits a woman of such birth. So I feel like they're definitely laying groundwork for some very rapey business coming up.
Okay. With that in mind, we will move forward. We have two relatively short scenes. Well, I may or may not run them together. Act 1, Scene 2. Enter Ctesiphon and nobles.
Antiochus, king of Assyria. So, Lord of Euphrates and Babylon, how long wilt thou lament thy father's death? Cast off those mourning weeds.
How long will I lament my father's death? Until proud Persia weep for Cyrus' death.
Oh, that will never be. Cyrus is strong, so strong, my lord, that were not Babylon fortified with vitals for 20 years, guarded with soldiers that will never yield, sooner would he expel you from your seat than you with open arms could anger him.
What is revenge but open wars? As were Antiochus a private man, and one of you, king of Assyria, I would not fail to work his overthrow. But you that are not touched with inward grief will not in that attempt be resolute.
Vouchsafe, O Lord, to tell me what it is. If I attempt it not, then let me die.
Why, this it is. Fain I have injured thee, and offered service to the Persian king, then being received as late Gobrias was. How easy mayst thou slay him and escape? For in the night he walks about his camp without a guard, even as a common man.
Yet he that kills him sure is to die.
I thought the fear of death would daunt him quite. 1,000 talents would I freely give to him that undertakes this enterprise.
My lord, I am resolved. Give me the gold, and I will venture life in this exploit.
My treasurer at arms shall give it thee, and Ctesiphon, when I receive his head, besides this sum thou shalt have annual pay, as much as thy revenues mount unto. And where thou art by calling but a knight, I will make thee lord of many provinces.
As for the gold, keep it till I return, and if I die, deliver it to my friend.
Well, Ctesiphon, manage this glorious act. Let me embrace him ere I take my leave.
Farewell, my lord. Now you Assyrian gods, to whom we sacrifice our foemen's blood, give favor to my looks, faith to my speech, that being gracious with the Persian lord, by me Assyria may be free from bans, and both the king and subjects death revenge.
Farewell, brave-minded Ctesiphon.
While this is doing, we will march from hence unto the country where Gobrias dwelt. He hath a castle well replenished with vitals, men, and furniture. And as our spies give us to understand, his only daughter stays within the hold, not knowing of her father's late revolt. Therefore we will surprise her unawares, and thou shalt be lieutenant in his stead when we have made his soldiers yield the fort.
And they exit. I will pause here because there's quite a lot of politics going on. This Antiochus is cunning. Has a plan. We can't afford wars. We'd lose. Go and be an undercover assassin. You know, that's yeah, some cunning there. And then, well, Gobrias is out of the way, so let's raid his castle. It's like, you know, it's not about attacking your enemies head on. It's about sneaking in and moving around and undermining people in different ways. There's some interesting politics going on here. I'm finding this as a tactical plan is quite, you know, it's none of this let us raise an army and be rah 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 rah. It's actually no, let's undermine our enemies from within. Helen.
He's being shown as the exact opposite of Cyrus, who is very self-restrained and noble and obeys all the rules, whereas this guy is losing at the moment, but he's on the whole sneaky.
You know, or a strategist. I mean, I'm so far moderately approving of the plan. Within the right, what the person is doing here. You know, knows his limits. Has a forward planning. Eric, then Lois.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's. I mean, it makes sense because, like, basically, Gobrias betrayed them because of the way the prince behaved towards his son, or at least that's the excuse. Probably not, but I mean, you know, and yeah, it's just interesting. Sort of, it's a bit King John type territory.
Lois.
Yeah, I would imagine that he's being set up as a bad king opposite the good king. But it's true that in More's Utopia, I think the utopians, when do their best to avoid war, and then at the beginning they usually try to get somebody to assassinate the general of the opposite army rather than, you know, risk the lives of all their people. So, you know, the author might be interested in that too.
Okay, I didn't want to linger too long on that. We'll go on to the next scene. Act 1, Scene 3. Enter Araspas Solus.
Must I confess that love is violent by doting on my captive Panthea? I will not love. I'll bridle these effects. It cannot be resisted. I must yield. Oh, what a tyrant is this cruel love that drinks my blood and makes me pale and wan, that sucks my spirit and makes me weak and faint, my tears, my heart, and that tears my heart and makes me almost dead, that revels in my brains and makes me mad. I am a soldier. I will conquer love. I'll mount me straight. Give me a horseman's staff. Proud love, sit fast, for now Araspas run, and scarcely stand. Oh, Panthea, thou sets my idle fantasy thus a work, and makes me speak and think I know not what. I would I might forget fair Panthea. I cannot name her, but I must say fair. And that word fair makes me remember her. Panthea is ugly, black, ill-favored, foul. And who is so beautiful as she? And I must weep for this misterming her. Why should I weep? Ask I the reason why? I have abused my love. Weep not, but die. Die not, but live, and enjoy thy love. What contrariety consisteth in my words? Oh, reconcile them, lovely Panthea. Thy looks have made me lunatic.
Enter Panthea and Nicosia.
I have intelligence that our lord is sick. We come to comfort him as captives may.
Oh, welcome, Panthea. Shall I tell my grief?
Sit still, my lord. Why change your color thus? What troubles you?
Something stands by and whispers in my ear. A kiss of Panthea would recover me.
Oh, leave these idle words. They make you worse.
Nay, they recover me. I am half well.
So say they are going from the world.
Panthea, sit down. But sit so, Panthea, as I may view thy face, or else I die.
Nicasia, command the music play. It may be music will allay the fit.
And music plays.
Nicasia, cause thy music to cease, for it is harsh and mars the harmony. Come, Panthea, sit down by me and let us talk.
Talk is not, turn ye about and sleep.
Oh, love.
How now, my lord, a soldier and lovesick?
I cannot keep it in. It bursts my heart. For sweet Panthea, is Araspas sick?
For me, my lord.
Fling not away, celestial Panthea. Though I were half dead, I should follow thee.
The air will hurt thee. Whither wilt thou go?
Where Panthea goes. Oh, frown not, my fair love.
Then love me not, else I will more than frown.
What? Will a captive woman threat her love?
Oh, give poor Panthea leave to threat herself. I mean my tragedy shall end the love.
No, lovely queen, I'll rather end my love than anger Panthea. Much less let her die. And yet, God knows, my love can never end, being infinite in measure and in time.
What words be these that cut my ears with grief? Oh, Abradates, little dost thou know what misery poor Panthea doth sustain. Wicked Araspas perish in thy love.
And exit Panthea.
Cannot I win her, O unhappy man? Araspas, thou wantest eloquence to woo. Against chastity no eloquence prevails. It was because I offered her no gift. She is a queen. What gifts can compass her? I should have courted her with better words. But here doth love and threatening disagree. Nothing but magic can obtain her love. If magic will, then Panthea shall be mine.
And exit and the close of Act 1. So, yeah, we're moving in a really, really dodgy direction there. I'm curious to know what the music that they play is. Is it deliberately inappropriate music for to annoy him, or is Araspas just going to be annoyed by anything? There's so many shifts and changes direction, and yeah, what do you do? It's that sort of you've been kidnapped by a serial killer situation of how much humoring do you do with this guy, because he's clearly really, really dangerous. Thoughts from the room. I'll go to Eric first, then Rachael.
I was going to say that it's sort of like with not the previous scene, the scene before that, where we had where the whole we'll rip him to shreds with our Persian swords, and then but Frolic, it's like it's got so many changes in line by line. It's like she's a queen. What gifts can encompass her? I should have quoted it with better words. Yeah, totally. And then magic will totally work. Of course, it can't possibly go wrong.
Yeah, we're introducing magic. That's where we did say there's going to be a magician coming up, so that does make sense. And yes, just to point out also, Nicasia still hasn't said anything yet. Played some lovely music, but still is a silent character. Rachael, then Briony.
No, for the music part, it's that thing where they bring up music sometimes, like what was it with the king and the countess, or with Solomon and Perseda, where they're playing drums instead of love, I guess string music or something like that. Maybe Nicasia comes in playing the drums, war drums, to break up the scene, because Panthea does say a soldier and lovesick, and then just Araspas like saying, oh, I didn't give her any gifts. It's kind of like that thing that people say, that there's that type of guy that thinks women are like vending machines and you put so many like tokens in and then it pays out. And then he just when he says magic, I'll get her by magic. It's just so I don't know, outrageous.
But also, you know, psychologically, it does all fit together. This kind of guy, Briony.
Yeah, so I did see this coming a bit. They're just continuing to lay it on thicker and thicker, aren't they? Even from that first line, love is violent, you know, and he's making excuses for himself, and he's trying to, you know, just everything that they could put on this, they are doing, and it's effective.
Lynn.
I mean, to us, the recourse to magic may seem a little absurd, but I think in the play world, we can assume that magic is real, that magic is going to might be effectual. So, even though it seems a little ridiculous to us, that's probably not what the audience is expecting. The audience is expecting the spell or the poison or the potion to work.
Briony.
There's also the whole element of how, in terms of religion, magic is viewed. So just not necessarily that it's a ridiculous thing for him to try, but that it's actually quite in terms of his eternal soul, it's quite a dangerous, desperate thing that he's going to try because he'll do anything to get this woman.
Helen, then Rachael.
Yes, and the other thing about magic, prophecies, all the supernatural stuff, it's very often two-sided. That what you think is happening and what appears to be happening is in fact the opposite of what is meant or is actually happening. So very often you get what you've asked for, but you should have asked for something else.
Always read the small print. Rachael.
No, how Eric brought up Callisto and Melibea before. I feel like this could be this even though this scene is very serious and underlying the stuff is very serious, you could have that, Panthea have a bit of that Melibea style of strong, of not having anything that he's serving, or maybe like in the death of Robin Hood, you could have the what is it, the abbess and the priest or the monk or something type scene, and you could have it that way, and you could have it kind of played for a dark comedy or something that kind of creeps out the audience, or maybe makes them laugh, but then it's like a ha ha, oh no.
Yeah, because there is a question, Panthea, just you can imagine that she's strategizing very heavily what her moves are to get through this situation. Whereas in a play like Callisto and Melibea, the stakes are nowhere near as high in that sense. There is no sense of compulsion whereas we have that in this situation. We will move forward. I'll go to Eric briefly, then Helen, then we'll go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say in Callisto and Melibea, like we had Celestina, so like maybe I'm just obviously this is not gonna. There probably won't be a Celestina in this, although it would be hilarious if
we
there
do
was.
have a magician.
We
are comparing completely unlike plays, by the way.
I know.
Just for those at home, Callisto and Melibea is quite fun, in a relatively light-hearted kind of way. Helen.
Yes, I was just going to say all the plays that we have referred to and any others we may refer to are available as videos on YouTube by us.
Yes, in fact, we have a second look, fast-paced version of Callisto and Melibea that you can watch as a piece of entertainment rather than just us discussing it in the ways that we are doing here. Anyway, enough of the plugs. Let's move on to Act 2. Act 2, Scene 1. Enter Histaspas and Chrysantas.
Chrysantas. When I look into the life, the manners, deeds, and qualities of mind, the graveness, power, and imperial parts, wherewith young Cyrus is so full adorned, my thoughts foresee that he is ordained of God to enlarge the limits of the Persian reign.
Histaspas, rare is to see those years so furnished with such rare experience, as is not common in the grayest hairs. Besides, his body hath of these rare gifts used to labor, hunger, thirst, and cold, gives true foretokens that the prince will prove a famous warrior and a conqueror.
And of the sundry virtues that abounds daily increasing in his princely breast, religion to the gods exceeds them all.
And reason good, for of all humane works, the care of them should chiefly be preferred.
And enter Cyrus.
Is this Assyrian friend or foe to us that dares approach so near the Persian camp?
In bending of my spear to Babylon and breaking it against the Assyrian ground, I came a friend, not a foe, to Cyrus' camp.
What reason moves thee, an Assyrian born, to bear such rancour to thy country's soil?
That secret I reserve for Cyrus' ears, upon whose secret favour I submit my person, honour, fortune, fame, and life.
Inform the king, certainly I will. O Persians, truly fortunate are you under the subjection of so sweet a prince, that measures all the actions of his life by mercy, justice, and respect of right. It seems the Assyrian prince hath injured this man with some notorious great indignity.
Man of Assyria, what wouldst thou with me?
O gracious Lord, great and invincible, receive into protection of your grace a wretched man, undone by tyranny and lawless rigour of a cruel prince.
What prince is he that thou accusest thus?
The new Assyrian king, a man disdained with endless marks of villainy and blood.
Descend unto the purpose of thy tale, and make thy state and fortune plain at once.
I am, said I was a man, erst noble, now banished reprobate, highly in favour with the Assyrian prince, still sensual rage of his unbridled lust did lay my state and honour in the dust. And thus, great lord, began my tragedy. One only virgin daughter had your thrall of years, inclining now to marriage state. Her face and beauty, if I seem not vain, were equal to the best Assyrian dames, and she supposed the flower of Babylon, the fruit of which her rare perfections ran, the swifter than fame through all the Syrian land, and lastly rested in the prince's ears, who, wounded with the report of beauty's pride, unable to restrain his stern desire, attended by a band of armed men, invades my castle when I was at rest, and bear my daughter thence with violent hands unto his palace, where she doth remain as concubine allotted to his bed. Striving her desperate honour to preserve, I came in frantic sort to Babylon, exclaiming on this villainous despite, banding the prince with many a bitter view, my just complaints when once he understood. He sorts me out a damned bloody crew of Rustians, swearers, murderers, and thieves, professed men, for gain and lucre's sake, to make no conscience for whom they slay and kill. Those men by solemn oath had vowed my life, as sacrifice unto their cursed swords, and hour by hour they sought to reave my soul. Living in hazard of continual death, I knew no home for me at Babylon, other than my grave and dumbless sepulchre. And so, for refuge to my wretched life, I have abandoned country, friends and all, and prostrate my estate at Cyrus's feet. O puissant Lord, whose great and conquering sword was forged by Mars and made for victory, protect the life of thy unhappy thrall, and make him follower of the Persian arms, that in the fortune of thy mighty hand, the fall of Ctesiphon may be revenged.
Ctesiphon, this tale of thine revives the woeful memory of my dearest son, slaughtered by that most barbarous tyrant hand.
Gobrias, ye have heard the Assyrian tale, what great complaints he makes against the prince, and those not causeless, if his words be true. Now, Cyrus is not rashly credulous, nor binds his faith on every stranger's vows. Tell me, Gobrias, dost thou simply think that this discourse is naught but naked truth? or else some forged or dissembled glows to sound our secrets and bewray our drifts.
Cyrus, the disposition of this prince, sold up and sworn to end us villainies, may prove the griefs of Ctesiphon unfeigned. Upon my conscience, Cyrus, trust the man. No doubt his sorrow and complaints are true.
O Cyrus, so it pleased the immortal gods. How happy were thy servant if his words proceeded from a vain dissembling tongue. So were my daughters honored undefiled, and Ctesiphon her father not exiled.
Be valiant, Ctesiphon, and follow me. Follow the fortune of a happy camp. No doubt thou, but thou shalt see the end, shall rue the injuries of his barbarous life among the damned souls in darkest hell.
Then should my ghost with ceaseless words oppressed pass and descend into the grave and rest.
And thus they all exit. Yeah, there's we were just noting in the chat how we don't have many particularly clear entrances as to when precisely Ctesiphon turns up. And Gobrias as well. I'm assuming he comes in with Cyrus and chatting off. So there's a lot of interesting questions as to precisely who's entering and when. But yeah, we have the undercover agent has arrived, telling a tale that seems to be remarkably stolen from what they're planning on doing to the dude who's in the room. So there's something particularly cruel about this, even though they don't know it's cruel yet. Is that... did I misread that? But that seemed to be what was going on.
Yeah.
Lois, then Alan.
I think that some of that speech of Histaspas belongs to Ctesiphon, doesn't it? Oh, Persians, truly fortunate are you. That sounds more like...
Yeah. I think that... I thought that, but I was in the middle of reading it and couldn't stop.
Yeah.
So there's a few things there. Because yes, we had that, so that makes sense. Yes.
Yes. Oh, Persians truly fortunate is the newcomer.
Yeah.
Ctesiphon.
Excellent. 'Tis noted. Other thoughts? Alan, then Rachael.
Yeah, I must admit that one I spotted and then got totally confused by the fact that Ctesiphon seemed to be actually telling the story of what was going to happen or had happened or is in process of happening to Gobrias. It does... I'm definitely short of the herbs that they were smoking at the time.
I say it looks like it's deliberate foreshadowing and a deliberate sort of act of for cruelty of just going when you hear the news you know I don't know or it's just that's what happens. Helen.
Yeah, but if you're going to tell a lie, it's much better to base the lie on something that is happening, has happened, or is likely to happen. And you can be much more circumstantial about it if there's an element of reality to it.
Rachael, was it Rachael next? Yes, Rachael, then Lois, then Eric.
No, I was going to say something about the staging. If it, some of those, what do you call it? Lord Mayor's show and town plays in New York, they're outside. I wonder if you could take something like this and put it outside in tents and have the audience travel from tent to tent, and have these scenes play out. I only say that because somebody asked, when did Gobrias come in or where was his entrance thing? And if you had the audience, traveling, you could just have the actors there as as a bit of set pieces themselves, if that makes sense.
Well, it's I mean, so far, apart from the shift, that one shift to the other court, it's all been pretty much one, potentially one relative location, within tents. I think you can build a lovely setting. I mean, that's how I'd expect originally the children, the chapel would do it. There might be some kind of elaborate setting that is available or within stock, especially if you're doing it before the Queen. Additional expense may occur, but that doesn't mean it can't be done that way, or shouldn't be done that way. That's always the option. Who was next? Have I stated it? Lois, then Eric.
Lois, then me.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that the reason this story strikes Gobrias and Cyrus and so on as plausible is precisely that it's exactly what that guy would do. And in fact, it's what he's going to do. So, except that it also proves, incidentally, because Rachael was asking about it earlier, that Gobrias' daughter is not Panthea. Gobrias' daughter is in a castle somewhere, which is about to be besieged or infiltrated somehow by Antiochus.
Yes, and in fact we may be about to discover who those characters are any second now, but I'll go to Eric first.
I was going to say that it's sort of interesting how you got this bit before, where you got the two older men, presumably older, men going, oh yes, he's such a wise general, and then Cyrus basically asks Gobrias, who is also an Assyrian, to sort of, so what do you think? Is he being truthful? And it's like, well, even if sort of Gobrias does not seem to recognize Ctesiphon, he probably doesn't know him, or maybe he does. It kind of seems a bit suspicious for the two Assyrians to be sort of trusted. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Well, I think the way Gobrias functions here is just going, oh my God, this is just so like my life, and so he's and that's again the sort of the way this is working is having is he ends up being the person who helps affirm this person's place in the court. So there is a certain logic to that. Helen.
No, I'm scratching my head.
Ah.
Sorry, I'm not trying to attract your attention.
That's right. Any additional thoughts before we go into the next scene? Okay, we've heard about them. It's time to meet Alexandra, who is dressed like a page, and Libanio in Alexandra's apparel. How we know this, of course, hopefully will come across in a moment in dialogue form.
Yeah, I think it will. Yeah. Madam, you see your page doth undertake a costly piece of service for your sake. For well, that service costly may be called, the end whereof of force must cost my life. For when the Assyrian king shall understand my forged habit and dissembling sex, and in these female weeds shall find Libanio, and Alexandra freely scaped his hands, what hope but certain death remains for me, and that with torments rare and exquisite. Yet, madam, for the reverence to my lord and duty that doth bind me to yourself, I will be Alexandra for this once, and die to save your honor and your life.
Oh, trusty servant of surmounting faith, worthy to attend the person of a god rather than daughter of poor Gobrias, this sacred service to a silly dame shall be engraven in tables of my heart with letters and characters so performed that when this body is bestowed in grave, no time nor yet corruption shall deface the print thereof from Alexandra's breast.
Thanks, lady. And for your further meed, sufficeth me the honor of the deed. Methinks I see the Assyrian stout of heart. Now, madam, carry a courageous heart and trust your page for Alexandra's part.
A tragical part, I fear, Libanio.
And enter Antiochus, Selinus, and somebody else who doesn't really fundamentally matter because I don't think they say anything.
Bird of a traitor, I presumed at last your lot would be to light into my hands. Although of cankered heart you would not yield until your castle shaked about your ears.
O sovereign lord, stand gracious to this dame that never trespassed in offence to you.
thy father's treason in revolting back from the due allegiance to the Assyrian crown, I will revenge upon his daughter's life.
What honour in a silly virgin's death, that ne'er had power or will to harm your grace?
Because the plants of such corrupted stocks will fructify according to the root. And for Gobrias' treason to his prince, I will prevent like mischief in his race.
Admit Gobrias might be reclaimed unto his first allegiance to my lord. Would you remit the offence of his revolt and take him to your former grace again?
So let the gods stand gracious to my soul, if he forsake those hateful Persian arms and firm his faith and loyalty to me.
Then, Prince, before you wreak revenge on me, grant passport and safe conduct to my page, that he may go and signify to him the desperate state wherein his daughter stands. When once my father shall perceive my plight, and that my life must pay for his revolt, I know that instant hour he will return and yield himself to mercy of my lord.
Scribe, give her page safe conduct through my camp. And boy, when you arrive before Gobrias, tell him, if he return, I pardon him. If otherwise, off goes his daughter's head.
I will, dread lord. Oh, madam, grant the gods these eyes once more may see your liberty.
And exit Alexandra.
As pleaseth their deities, Libanio.
Dinon, take you this damsel to your charge, and use her nobly, though she be a thrall.
To use her worse, the honour were but small.
And they exit. Let's just say I don't want to be employed by Alexandra. I'm just going to say that the deal there is not good. Yeah. Thoughts in the room on that one?
That plot worked, though.
It did. Oh no, it was very effective. And so far, it looks like Libanio isn't getting the worst end of the worst end of this stick yet. Lynn.
Yeah, it feels a little late in the game to be introducing basically the C plot. You know, we have the assassination attempt of King Cyrus of Persia, and then we have a love story, an unrequited love story, and now we have a gender flipping thing that it's getting a little complicated.
But they have foreshadowed this a lot. I mean, you know, we knew that these people existed, and that this, we didn't know about the servant and the swapping clothes. But
in practice, it might not feel quite so. Oh God, another complication. The other thing that's totally going to be maybe a little challenging is that Prologue warned us this is a tragedy. It's tragedy. It's not coming. It's tragedy. But a guy dressing up in women's clothes, it's hard not to make that comic.
Yeah, it's interesting the number of potential influences that play on this as well. That's been going. It's part of this sort of explosion of dramas that you're getting in the public playhouses. Tamburlaine-esque. But then also interacting with the kind of stuff that Lily and other probably Lost players are dealing with as well in this interesting form here. So I'm really interested in all the various potential inputs into this and what this playwright's trying to do with them. Briony.
Yeah, it's got this real solid, definite theme to all the different plots, though, which seems to be like women as chattel, which I know is not unique to just this play. But I'd be really interested to see how this turns out for Libanio, to see what they do with this, whether it turns out that you know, because he's a man, oh, well, it's actually, you know, you're not a woman, so we're not going to do what we would have done if you were, or whether it's going to be worse because he's a man, or whether he's just going to be subjected to the same thing and it's going to be an opportunity to perhaps show, or make men realise what things would be like if tables were turned.
And of course, remember, in the original context, none of them are men; they're all boys. So, in that sense, the disguising and the swapping of roles is actually very plausible, because it's just as plausible as any other role being played. Lois, then Rachael, then Eric, then Helen.
Well, this is romance material, really. I mean, it's like something out of Climate and Clamades or whatever, and it's also providing, once Alexandra gets to another location, namely Cyrus' court, she provides another love interest. We could do with one. There seem to be a lot of men around in Cyrus's court. So, I mean, there are all sorts of possibilities.
Yes, by having a B plot that is doing, you know, potentially ends up doing similar work, or doing it in a different way, it's giving us all sorts of thematic options. Rachael, then Eric, then Helen.
No, I mean, if Libanio was being played by one of the younger boys and he didn't have a beard yet, but Alexandra did, I feel like that would be an easy switch for them. You know what I mean? Like if Alexandra was just an older boy and, you know, she had facial hair or something, the actor playing her had facial hair, that it might be an easier switch or mistake for them to make, if it makes sense. I don't know. Yeah.
Eric.
I was going to say that like, this is not a trope that is unfamiliar, though. Like, you have a lot of this. I can't remember which play it was, but there is a lot of the, you know, the you know, the servant being disguised as the lady or the noblewoman or whatever to escape, and then both of them getting caught or something else. Like, you know, there is a lot of that in early modern. So it's not entirely unfamiliar. It's just unfamiliar because it's a male servant, I think, as well.
Helen, then Briony, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I feel that both women are very, very. They've got purpose. They've got enormous strength of mind, and they're making their own luck. They're being active. They do seem to me more than most early modern women in this sort of play situation to be plot drivers rather than just putting up with what comes and hits them.
Briony.
Yeah, just a little thing. I was going to make a joke earlier about the whole transparent neck thing being, you know, all the easier to spot an Adam's apple, and that's actually now completely relevant now that we've got a bit of casual cross-dressing going on.
Okay. We will move on, however, as we go to Act 2, Scene 3, as we've got labelled. Precise labelling of scenes, there is room for some variation, but that seems to be the, broadly speaking, agreed. And we have the entrance of the spy, the undercover spy, Ctesiphon. So let's see what happens here.
I murder Cyrus, far be such a thought, much more the execution of the deed. Like as the sun beams to the gazer's eye, so is his view to daunted Ctesiphon. During the rancor of my wicked mind, and melting all in thoughts of sweet remorse, how wise and gracious is this Persian king, who by his wisdom wins his followers' hearts, letting them march in armor wrought with gold, and he girt in a coat of complete steel. O Cyrus, politic and liberal, how honorable and magnanimous, rewarding virtue and revenging wrongs, how full of temperance and fortitude, daring to menace fortune with his sword, yet merciful in all his victories.
And enter Cyrus.
See where he comes. I'll fall upon the ground and ask for pardon at his highness' feet.
Rise up, Assyrian. Cyrus is no god.
Oh, Cyrus, I know Antiochus, my lord said I know I will renounce him quite. Suborned me, wretch, with his persuasive words to do a deed of such impiety, as I, God knows, suborned to think upon. It was thy death, victorious Cyrus, but mighty lord, your virtues conquered me, and I were an enemy false and treacherous. Am I become a vowed friend to Cyrus's health, and in that resolution pressed to die.
Live long to wail for thy pretended ill, as free from punishment as for reward. The lives of kings are guarded by the gods, nor are they in the hands of mortal men. Assyrian, though thy sword were at my breast, the jealous angel that attends on us would snatch it from thy hands and fling it down. And therefore muse not at this accident.
Seeing knightly Cyrus is thus merciful, vouchsafe this service at thy vassal's hands. Give me but letters from your majesty to signify how fain you would have peace, and draw your legions from Assyria, and bearing them unto Antiochus. In the delivery I will murder him. So highly do I honor Cyrus's name, so will they think on base Antiochus.
Enter Gobrias with Alexandra.
Thou shalt have letters to the Assyrian king, free liberty to pass from this our camp and conduct money from our treasury. Attend our leisure, I will send thee straight. What virgin is it that Gobrias leads?
My daughter, mighty Cyrus, and your child, for I commit her to your patronage.
Then, princely virgin, welcome to our camp. But why sigh you? Why hang you down the head? And in your pale looks bury beauty's pride. 'Tis pity those looks should be stained with tears.
Even as a dove late rifled by the eagle, whose breast is tainted with his forked talons, so stands poor Alexandra terrified, and almost dead to think of her escape, if thou be Cyrus of whom Asia sings. Rescue, oh rescue, poor Libanio.
From whom, fair madam, should I rescue him?
Oh, from Antiochus, that bloody king, who, when he heard my father served your grace, besieged his fortress with his men-at-arms, where only I and that Libanio stayed. By whom I live, for when the hold was lost, he being bondman and of a baser birth, would needs constrain me to put on his weeds, and he disguised as I was wont to go, would be Gobrias' daughter in my stead, and so was thought of King Antiochus, and all the nobles of his warlike camp, but I am bondman, and at his request, whose care was only to preserve my life, sent hither as a messenger from him to will my father, whom they thought my lord, to leave your camp and come to Babylon, or else Libanio, his beloved child, should die for his so traitor-like revolt, and die he must, lest Gyrus give him life.
The deed was full of honor and deceit. If gold will pay his ransom, he shall live, and therefore, Alexandra, be not sad.
So shall Gobrias beat Cyrus back, and for his sake make lavish of his blood.
And when they know how he deluded them, I fear they'll rate his ransom at his head.
Then blood and death, Bellona's waiting maid, shall ghastly march in Babylon's waste streets, and never was a bondsman death revenged, as Cyrus means for this Libanio.
And they exit Ctesiphon. Oh, isn't Cyrus lovely? Oh no, I don't want to kill him now. I'll ask forgiveness, and no, I'll murder the other one for you.
Yeah, I'm surprised Cyrus agrees to that.
Yes.
Well, it gets him out of the house. I mean, considering what he's just said, I'd be quite happy to send it. Even if he doesn't do it, at least he's nowhere near you. Yeah. You know, you could just kill him, but hey, it's an outside chance it might work. And yes, Alexandra has arrived at court and passed on some news. Can see where this might be going. Who knows? Alan, then Eric.
Yeah, I must admit, the last line I had in that sequence, I'm damned if I can understand it. So shall Gobrias beat
It's be at.
Cyrus back.
No, it's be at.
For his sake.
Put a break in between be and at.
Ah, right. That
yes,
makes
there's one or two of those.
sense.
Yeah. We've had one or two where we're missing a space.
Right. That now actually does make some sense as English.
Eric, then Helen.
Yeah, I see. It started with "I murder Cyrus," so I kind of I had no idea how that was gonna go. I thought he was plotting, and then he just kind of went, "Yeah, well, actually, he's quite lovely, isn't he?" But
It's
like,
really murder Cyrus.
Yeah, it sort of needs question marks in it, doesn't it? It's sort of, me? No. Helen.
Yeah, I think we ought to look at Alexandra because she's telling porkies.
Mm-hmm.
She says that her Libanio has absolutely insisted on taking her place and forced her to escape dressed in his clothes. Whereas in fact, because we were there, we know that he was very dubious about the whole matter.
Yeah, it was obviously her idea, wasn't it? And besides, how could he force her to do anything?
Well, everyone's lying in this play, aren't they?
Could persuade her, but yes, I mean, she is definitely telling porkies. I mean, kudos
massaging the truth, massaging it.
Yes, kudos for saying, "Can somebody please save the man? He's put himself in danger for me, the boy, whatever." But yeah.
They don't think it's very likely that he'll be saved, and then they're planning instead to massacre everybody else in revenge. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the contingency planning. In the event, in the worst case scenario, these are the plans. I saw Briony, Rachael, and then Eric, and then we'll move on. Rachael. Yeah.
I was just really confused about because Alexandra refers to Libanio as his beloved child, and I was just trying to catch up and see, and I've seen that she does refer to him as being a bondsman, a face of earth, so it's obviously just meaning that he's been mistaken for his beloved child, I guess. So yeah, sorry, I got to myself.
Okay. Rachael, you're good. Eric.
I was just going to say that it's interesting how, after clearly what's been, I don't know, mounting tension between like Assyria and Persia, Cyrus decides to, start the war over Libanio, which is just quite an interesting point.
Well, it's assault on his lieutenant's lands, which was bequeathed to him, and it's all part of the overall revenge thing that he did to a degree sign up to earlier. So
True.
it is part of the wider political struggle. It's doing all sorts of interesting work, which leads us on to Act 2, Scene 4. We were promised a magician, and a magician you shall have. Enter Araspas and a magician to Panthea asleep.
Give me the charm, for now doth Panthea sleep. If it prevail, this jewel shall be thine.
Doubt not the operation of this charm, for I have tried it on Dinah's nymph, and made her wanton and lascivious. If Panthea be a goddess, she must yield.
But tell me first, how must it be applied, and in what time will it begin to work?
Lay it under the pillow of her bed, and in an hour it will make her wake and yield.
I will. Now favor me, infernal Jove.
So, wake her not till she begins to smile. Now love begins to seat him in her brain.
Away, I will not. You are imprudent.
Tell me, magician, what imports this speech?
Why now she thinks some solicits her.
You are deceived. I am not beautiful.
Oh, give me leave to court her in her sleep. It may be when she wakes, she will not love.
Softly, Araspas. If you talk, she wakes.
Oh, let her wake. I long to talk with her.
Now gins her eye to open, and she stirs.
Stand thou aside until I call for thee.
What dreams and fond illusions have I had? How comes this word love in Panthea's mind? I love, nay, rather will I die than love, and yet against my will I think on love. O Panthea, think upon thy funeral, for thou art withered with excess grief, Love and deformity cannot agree.
If Panthea be fair and beautiful, then love and Panthea do well agree.
Araspas, Panthea, and herself will jar when she shall yield to love. Or what is love but gall and aloes to my martyred soul? Now Abradates is not in my sight.
Here is Araspas, lovely Panthea. For thee I'll leave the field, then leave thou him. For thee I'll leave the world, then love thou me. Let Cyrus' joy and pomp and empery sufficeth me to conquer fair Panthea. Let others glory in their ground and gold. Panthea to me is 20,000 worlds, and without Panthea, all the world is trash.
For thee, Araspas, will I curse my stars that suffers thee so to solicit me. For thee I will count the world as hell, except thou leave thus to solicit me.
How figurative is Panthea in her speech, resembling cunning rhetoricians, who in the person of someone deceased persuade their auditors to what they please. I cannot think these be Panthea's words. She is so fair to give so sharp reply. But if these be the words of Panthea, then must she change her face, and seem less fair, and seem less fair. For know that beauty is love's harbinger, and being beauteous, Panthea needs must love.
Would I were changed into some other shape, that I might fright thee with my hideous looks. I, in the person of myself deceased, protest this heart shall never harbor love. But if my looks be this preparative, I'll beat my face against the hapless earth, or deeply harrow it with these my trembling hands, which I hold up to heaven to change thy mind, or hasten death to rid me from this suit.
Nay, then, if amorous courting will not serve, know whether thou wilt or no, I'll make thee yield.
Though fortune make me captive, yet know thou that Pantheus will never be constrained.
But torments can enforce a woman's will.
Then should thy importunity enforce, the sight of thee, Araspas, should constrain. For I protest before the gods of heaven, no torment can be greater in my thought.
I say so still. I say so till ye feel them, Panthea.
I feel more torments than thou canst invent. Who add the more shall ease that I sustain. All torments be they, never so exquisite, are but ascending steps onto my end. And death to Panthea is a benecite. What are thy threats but sugared promises?
Then, then shalt thou live, and I'll importune thee.
Aye, now is Panthea menace to the proof. Yet every word thou speak shall wound my heart, and in despite of thee I'll die at last. The earnester thou art, the sooner too. But to prevent it thus, I will fly from thee. Cyrus shall know Araspas' villainy.
And exit Panthea.
Thus therefore shall I pine, abandon love. Oh, 'tis inherent to his Araspas' soul, and thereby claims an immortality. So it shall ne'er begin, nor never end. O cursed magician, are these thy wicked spells?
Oh, pardon me, my honourable lord, for Panthea's virtues frustrated all my art.
Must magic yield to virtue? Wherefore then didst thou assure me she should be in love?
So was she, being asleep, as did appear.
And why not, being awake? Speak, villain, speak.
Reason, my lord, was the predominant, Her intellectual part strived against love, and magic cannot command the soul. While appetite and common sense remained, you saw I made her smile, embrace the air, and show the effects of amorous conceits. Few women used to skirmish with such thoughts, and had this Panthea been at liberty, she would have yielded to your honour's suit, but in captivity is naught but grief, and love with grief will keep no residence.
Smooth are thy words, rough and harsh thy sense, for they import Panthea cannot be forced. Canst thou with incantations make her die, that she being gone, my love may follow her?
Life is adjunct unto our human form, extempt from magic and magicians, and that's the cause we sooner hurt brute beasts than such as have the semblance of ourselves.
Deceitful artisan, thy words are slights. Thy words deceitful and full of guile. With its a witch, sweet words must conquer her. Out of my sight. Yet conceal this attempt. If thou bewray it, mar all thy skill, this sword shall send thee to eternal hell.
And they exit. So, yes, it would be fair to say that Araspas is demanding a refund from the magician there. I mean, it's not getting a great report on Amazon, is it? It's getting 1 star. Not what I ordered. Lois, muted at the moment.
Yes, I don't know why they don't run after her instead of having a discussion. I mean, she says she's going to tell Cyrus, which will be the end of everything for him.
I for one, would like to have heard more of Panthea's sleep talk. I'd like some sort of, just, no, not there. That's in the wrong room. I just wanted some more slightly random things. Just sleep on the pillow, drooling. Just the sort of silly things there, but also just really like the way the scene works. Of just he's going, you're and it's just go away, and it's just going, oh, how figurative is Panthea in her speech. It's a really and just the way the magician is trying to say, yeah, well, it only really works when they're asleep. When they're awake, there's all this other stuff that it's not powerful enough to do anything about. Loves you in her dreams, mate. Eric.
There is that element. It's basically what happened in the previous scene where we had sort of Ctesiphon going, I can't possibly murder Cyrus, but I'll murder somebody else. It's that kind of reversal happening in this as well.
Yes. Lynn.
This was kind of an unexpected turn, though, because in storytelling, magic works, but it goes wrong. Isolde drinks the potion and falls in love with Tristan instead of falling in love with the king. So that's kind of, I think, what would have been expected, is what I was expecting, that the love spell works, but she falls in love with the magician instead of it works, but it goes wrong. But it doesn't really work. It's not strong enough to overcome her intellectual parts. That was really quite surprising to me.
And it sort of mitigates because it's still not. We're still not having just random comedy hijinks. That would have been falling in love with a magician. That would have been antic stuff that the prologue said we weren't getting. So remember, this is still a tragedy. Though our definition of tragedy is perhaps a lot more fluid than we were thinking earlier. Eric.
Yeah, while this scene was happening, I was thinking there are a lot of elements in it that sound like, allusions to other plays, like a lot of Lily plays and stuff, but then it doesn't take the same form. And it seems to do dialogue really actually quite well.
Yeah, no, I think it's doing something really interesting with other trends that are going on, but it's arranging things in a very different way. and it's partly just simply because it's a different company. Lily was a different set of boys, and that this is closer to what this company might be interested in at this time. And also the way it's in conversation with what the other playing companies, the adult companies, are doing. So, it's asking a lot of questions that we don't necessarily have that much data to conjure with. Briony.
As ever, I've been quite focused on a lot of this sort of misogynistic elements and whatnot with this play. And there's a lot of things that we've seen before, things that we're familiar with, things that are still relevant to women today. But I don't know if I've ever seen them all put together in such a way. And I don't know where they're taking it, which is unusual as well.
Yeah, and that's a good almost direct us into the final thoughts. I will go around the room before I do that, of just actually that fear that we reach at this midway point of the curse of the final session, of, where is this play going to land? It's put all these elements up in the air, and the potential here is really strong, because the character of Panthea and to a degree Alexandra, they're really interesting characters. They're being put in terrible situations. We know it's not going to end well necessarily, but is it going to end badly? Is perhaps our fear for how it's going to land. Rachael, you had something to say before I go around to do final thoughts?
I can just go when final thoughts.
Okay, cool, go for it. Yeah, I can go to you. I don't have to go to you first. I can, but you're in the chair. I passed you the conch, but I can go to somebody else.
No, just what Briony was saying about. Yeah, there's so many things. The dialogue is also amazing, and just how it just flows so easily, even on a first look. And then just it does all the stuff that Panthea, like having to play pretend nice with this guy at first because she doesn't know if he's violent or not, and then in the end wakes up and sees he's tried to do some weird stuff, and then is just like, I'm out of here. And even Alexandra, in her way that she just kind of ditches Libanio, is, I feel like that's so against what what do you call it? What women were supposed to be like demure. She shows up to Cyrus acting demure and cheerful, but that's not her personality. And I don't feel like she's a bad person for ditching Libanio in that situation, because I think it's not just death that she was avoiding, but she knows all the other things that were probably in store.
Yeah, when they discover who the bondman is, the odds on having as bad a fate is perhaps slightly less, but maybe not. Yes, and Helen was pointing out that she was slightly massaging the truth. That gives an interesting layer of complexity to what that character, who we've only briefly met, potentially could have. Helen, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes. Cyrus has seen Alexandra from a distance. He has not yet met the other lady. Cyrus's incredible virtue and utter superiority to all other princes and kings, in his moderation, his judgment, etc., is beginning to worry me. I feel this guy, if he falls, is going to fall hard. So I know Cyrus was supposed to be a great king and endued with all sorts of virtues, and I don't know this story, if it does exist elsewhere. But nevertheless, he does worry me slightly. Well, more than slightly.
Yes, the way that everyone basically just goes, what a guy. You know, constantly. Not necessarily a great choice of some of his followers, but hey, we can't win everything. Yes, let's see where that goes. Alan, any final thoughts?
There's some well-written speeches. I'm not in a position to really work out where the hell it's going. There seem to be an awful lot of balls in the air, and I just hope we're not going to get a complete balls up in session 2.
Yeah, and I have to say it has read remarkably well, considering that, you know, this text has many problems with it. Just for the readers here, it's a tricky one, but it does seem to have come through. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yes, I like Helen. I am struck by, like, what a good king is Cyrus, and I was thinking more this is kind of it has the play as a didactic purpose, the good king versus the bad king, kind of a, you know, little drama, mirror for magistrates kind of thing. And the conflict is, you know, even though Cyrus is a very good ruler, the forces of evil are quite determined to be baddies. So how is that going to shake out? But yeah, she has a good point. He's just sort of too good to be. He's too good to last. He's too good to be true. So yeah, what is it? Is it his tragedy, or is it actually Panthea's tragedy? Yeah, I really can't really tell where this is going. But it is really interesting for that, you know, good king versus bad king opposition that's being set up. And because the female characters do seem to have quite a bit of agency and strength of character. So that definitely interests me, and I do want to know what happens to them.
Yeah, it's that problem, you know, when you have a king who's just basically, you know, isn't he fab? You know, it's going, well, we kind of hope something goes wrong because then he's more interesting. At the moment, he's not a fundamentally interesting king. But at least he's not making fundamentally long, uninteresting speeches. I mean, he says that Cyrus's presence has been actually relatively brief, you know, to keep everything hanging together. Lois, any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm curious as to how it's going to go as well, because I think this story was incredibly popular. I mean, there is a 17th century French romance, which I haven't read, called Le Grand Cyrus, which was incredibly popular. I mean, everybody was reading it, either in French or in English translation, pretty well to the end of the century. And I'm sure it's based on this. It seems fairly clear that, given that Cyrus is the best ever prince and that Panthea appears to be the best ever woman, that something is going to happen when they finally meet. And I should think that's probably where the main love interest is going to be. But there is so much going on. I mean, it's a bit like Sidney's Arcadia, actually. I mean, it's much more that kind of thing than a tragedy in the classical style. I wonder whether somebody said something, you know, it would be nice if instead of all these plays about truly horrible kings, we had one or two about somebody decent. Or it may be that for the boys' companies, they thought it was better to offer the kids some good examples than a whole series of horrible ones, because Campaspe does have a good ruler as well.
Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's just I love how I was a bit distracted. Yeah, it's interesting how you can't really trust anyone in this play. There's a part of me going, yeah, it's not a tragedy quite yet, but like it's not a comedy, it's more of a political thing. Because in politics you can't trust anybody anyway. I mean, which seems a bit obvious. But I just loved how Panthea wakes up after the whole, like, you know, love spell thing and just goes, out of my face, walk away, go away, or else I will. Yeah, it kind of, I don't know, it just seems very, it keeps subverting our expectations and twisting everything around, which is quite interesting. I don't know what that means for the rest of the play, but I'm curious to see what happens next.
Briony, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just really, really hopeful for tomorrow, because it's given us all this stuff that we kind of know what it's about and what's happening, but yet we've got to the halfway point and there's not a single person in the room who really knows where it's going, and I love that.
Dan, any final thoughts?
I agree with Briony's sentiment there. I feel it's a shame with this text that we don't have any of the chorus songs here. I feel like we're really missing a lot from that. I do think that the prologue does basically spell out exactly what this play is trying to do, which is strip away all of the antic items, no clowning around, no supposed devices that have sprung up of late. Normally, I would find that a play of that, especially with the boys' companies plays that we have been watching, we have seen a lot of that, and I'm frankly entertained by all of that. I expect that. So this does seem to be subverting my expectations of what a boys' company can and often does do, which is in this particular case seem to just tell a much more, I guess, serious story without it being necessarily about a king who's murdering everyone. So I'm interested in it for that respect. I think it's really good that we're doing a first reading of it because this text really absolutely does need a lot of cleaning up. It's very difficult to navigate through. I can imagine what you had to go through as an editor of this.
By and large, I just tidied up the obvious stuff and left everything else to random chance and hope that the room would cope. That's broadly speaking. I mean, there are occasional errors which are based on the original errors. Some of them are transfer errors. Panthea does come up as Panthera every so often, so she's a Thundercat, which is important. But yeah, it's It is coming. It is coming across in doing all sorts. And you're right. It's nice to have kings who are not just randomly murdering lots and lots of people. There are plans to kill people, but it's with political intent. And there is strategy going on here, as well as the sort of more bolder gestures of people changing sides in quite contracted ways. Eric.
I was going to say that I know that this is not technically speaking a Turkish play, but it is very sort of that thing of, because we mentioned Solomon and Persida, where it sort of starts very, very lighthearted with the whole, I think it was Basilico and the ass and all that stuff, all those shenanigans. And then it slowly descends into really, really uncomfortable and dark territory, which is if it goes sort of in that direction, it just seems like.
Well, it's interesting. It set us up on this mood which is uncomfortable from the very beginning. We do have these scenes that are perhaps slightly lighter potentially. The whole magician thing could play out as farce, but you remember what the intent of the magician scene is, and so it veers off from that track. And it's a really interesting question what the audience response to that scene would be. Actually, I mean, nobody has on stage died yet. We have references to people having been killed, but we haven't actually had any death yet, and that's usually the point where you start going, aha, this is a tragedy. So it'll be interesting when that comes in. Dan?
Just one other item that especially normally I'm used to seeing with boys' companies. There's an expectation that they're going to be taking advantage of their talents, whether it's singing talents or language talents or whatnot. There's an obvious dearth of other languages in here, for one. I'm not seeing all the Latin popping up. This is probably because of the copy text, unfortunately, that we're missing all of the songs, so we can't see how they would have taken advantage of their voices. But this seems to be requiring just a lot of straight up acting. Versus a lot of, we're going to show you what kind of skill set we have. We're just going to count on you to tell the story straight. We've written some good speeches for you. Act this well.
Yeah, and not even that much doubling potentially. It looks like every member of the company probably has a part, with maybe the odd double or addition. There aren't that many parts in this play, in terms of an excess. It's not like if you were expecting something like, it's a bit like a history play or something where lots of armies. You would expect people to be popping on and off stage in different hats all the time. This play isn't really doing that. The focus is quite narrow on selection. And also, of course, our bias is, or a lot of the Boys Company players, of course, is very John Lilly bias, because just simply this. So, you know, that's the big oasis of suddenly going, oh, there's a load of plays. We have done non-Lilly plays, and we've done lots of plays which are, shall we say, predominantly boy, or as opposed to necessarily explicitly boy company kinds of texts. And yeah, this is sort of somewhere in between. It's doing all sorts. Other thoughts? We've got a couple of minutes left. Back to Dan.
Just one other item. This is the first instance. This just might be because I've not read enough plays, but this is the first instance I recall seeing a stage direction that says "to the audience." Yeah. So I mean, normally when you're going to have any kind of prologue, you don't have to say that. Of course, there's no speech heading for this particular thing, especially because the prologue is printed in the wrong place in the original printing. I'm assuming, I mean, this is definitely a prologue. I can't see how it's not how it should have been inserted in the middle there. But yeah, I've never seen a stage direction says to the audience. Even when you have asides, either it doesn't tell you it's an aside or it says aside there. So just interesting. And this is a well-known printer, Edward Aldie, of the time. I don't recall having seen him or anyone else do this.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. There might be something similar. But you're right. It does leap out rather, doesn't it? That's one to check. It should be relatively straightforward for us to do that.
Yeah.
He said.
Probably could, but I haven't.
No, and at this time, I'll try and remember to do it for tomorrow. Eric.
I was going to say that it's well, I mean. Well, obviously we're still at the first look stage, but it feels like it could easily be a second look in one session, because we're halfway through it, and it's like a lot has happened for 2 acts, barely like 2 acts. We've had 3 plots unraveled. Uncovered or whatever. We've had like sort of so many characters introduced. We've had drama actually happening rather than sort of introduction of characters that are going to appear later. We I don't know, it's just like a really interesting kind of artifact to consider.
Yeah, and in that sense you're absolutely right. It's not very long. It's very doable as a second look in that sense that there aren't that many characters, so it should fit within our bounds. There are some where I'm looking ahead going, oh, that's going to be tight. This one does fit quite nicely in that sense. And the action so far is not too complicated, so in a Zoom environment most of it works, and it's just a matter of negotiating I think the music needs a bit of thought, but that's very doable because in theory it's just one singer, and that's at least reasonable to think about. Anything else before I close the session, because we have just reached the end of our official allotted time. So on that note, I'd like to thank everyone for reading so far in this play. We've got one more session. Hopefully it's not going to disappoint. We never know. There's always a little bit of a fear. Endings are hard. Endings are always very, very hard. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.
Cursed magician, are these thy wicked spells?